As a way of centering us for our time today, I want to share with you Psalms 82, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. God takes his stand in the divine council. He gives judgment among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly by granting favor to the wicked? Give justice to the lowly and the orphan. Maintain the right of the poor and the destitute. Rescue the lowly and the needy. Deliver them from the power of the wicked. They don't know. They don't understand. They wander around in the dark. All of the earth's foundations shake. I hereby declare, you are God's children of the Most High, all of you. But you will die like mortals. You will fall down like any prince. Rise up, God. Judge the earth, because you hold all nations in your possessions. I want to welcome you to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VH Sonny Dixon Jr. I am the lead pastor here at Hobson, and I'm in for my weekly conversation with my son, Trey, where he helps me to transition from the time of study and reflection and meditating on the scripture for this coming week and to get to the point of sermon preparation. And it's also a time just for us to be able to check in, and he gives me some context for which I might think that the word might speak to the congregation. So this has become an important and valuable time for me. It's also a time that gives me an opportunity to reach out and to be in touch with some people that I might not see on a Sunday morning. I said we started this a couple of years ago, and while we are back, there are many of you, probably most of you, who listen to this that do not come on a Sunday morning, but you want to find out what it is that we're talking about. So I truly appreciate when you let us know that there was something that we said that may have challenged you to look at the word a little differently, or it might have brought you some comfort at a time of when you were going through some things. So it has become an important time for me, and I hope for you also. And it gives me an opportunity to thank you just for your support, for your prayers, for your financial gifts, for your concerns, for all of the things that keep us going and keep me going as the pastor here at Hobson. So thank you for spending some time with us, and I hope that today something is said or that in our conversation that uplifts you. Always when we gather at Hobson is that we like to spend some time sharing with one another those things that are upon our hearts, that we want each other to be in prayer for, but most importantly is that we want to be able to give thanks for what God is doing in our lives, or those concerns that are weighing on us, to say to God, you know we need your help. And we spend time, whether it is in our worship experience or whenever we have small groups, we spend time in sharing with one another, so that, because we believe that a church that prays together, a congregation that prays together, has an incredible amount of power. So it's not necessarily about the numbers, but it is about our connection with God and saying to God that we want to be used as an instrument of your grace to answer the prayers that we are offering for one another and offering to God. A part of our celebrations have got to be the celebrating of birthdays, and many of you who are listening in, listen in for your birthday and for us to give a shout out to you on your birthday. And so we like doing that. I know that there are times that we miss some, and particular like this week, Pam Hicks is out of town. She's the one that kind of keeps me up on the birthdays and lets me know what's going on. And so she's out of town, and I was determined not to bother her this week. And so if you tuned in and I did not give you a birthday shout out, blame it on Pam, not on me. So this week we want to start out because on Sunday we've got a couple of birthdays on Sunday that we want to share, and one is Cassandra Hughes' birthday. And also Brenda Barnes' birthday is on Sunday, so we're sending shout-outs to them. And then this coming week, we've got Pam's, I did remember this, Pam's granddaughter, Jaylee Harris, Pamela Crosby, Dr. Richard Tillman, most of you all know him as Ranger, Cheryl Purnell, Kathy Neville, a good friend of Trey, a friend of mine also, but Crystal West has a birthday next week. Gaylyn Gatewood, his birthday is this week, a dear friend of Herbert Marbury. Maya Malik, Thomas Weber, Juanita Bridgeforth, Lania Ferguson, DJ Hudson, Benjamin Eagles, AJ Starling, Antoinette Bradford, Sheila Gardner, Ronnie Lawson, Jason Holloman, Upshaw, Vincent Briggs, Sharon Donovan Williams, that's Stacy's sister, Randy Wilmore, Bridget Douglas, Nancy Webb Stewart, Andrew Turner, longtime friend, Mary Littlejohn, and then I've got some pastor friends of mine who are having birthdays this week and want to send shout-outs to them. And first on the list is Edwin Sanders, and also want to include in that his wife, who also has a birthday next week, Dr. William Crowder Jr., Kelly Miller Smith Jr., Pamela Keller, Keith Caldwell, Sam McLaughlin, and James Turner. All of them are celebrating next week, and if you know them, be sure to, you too can send a shout out to them. This week in our prayer concerns that we're offering up, as I said last week, COVID is still out there, and want to still encourage you to be cautious. And so, but to the list, Molly Secors and Elena Beatty, who used to do a show with Trey. She has COVID, and so we want to offer our prayers and hope that they are feeling better soon. We are, of course, praying for the families and who had loved ones who were killed in the Highland Park, Illinois shooting, and especially offering up prayers for Aiden McCarthy, who was the 2-year-old whose parents were shot while they were attending that parade. And we're just praying for that city and for that community, as we still are people who are just fixated with guns and with weapons, and so we're praying for them. We're praying for the city of Akron, and particular praying for the family of Jalen Walker, who was killed this past week, as they stopped him, and I guess he was trying to avoid arrest, but 60 bullets. He had 60 wounds at 8 officers, and so there's no telling how many actual rounds were shot. But we're praying for that, and and just against the backdrop of how we're seeing and we are watching. How others are apprehended that may have done something. We don't know anything other than the fact that he may have been avoiding a traffic stop. But we've seen others of who have been stopped and knowing that they have done something, and yet they felt a need to shoot him 60-something times. And so we're praying for that family, and we're praying for that community. Also want to ask for prayers for the family of a good friend and a mentor of mine, Reverend Dr. Joe Shelton, but he passed this week, and so ask that you be in prayer for his family and for all of the congregation members that he touched in his many years of ministry. And as a way of celebration, we want to celebrate Brandon Mason, who is transitioning from being the pastor at Locust Ridge Church here in Nashville. And he is going to Zion Hope Church in Pensacola, Florida. And we want to send our prayers up for him and for the congregation as here in Nashville that are losing him, and that the congregation that is welcoming him in Pensacola. We're offering prayers. And then finally on our prayer celebrations, I want to offer up a prayers for another friend, Renita Perkins, who has retired as the principal in the Metro school system, and so she's going home and is going to be spending some time. We been offering up prayers for her and prayed for her this past winter as her son died from COVID, and she's going to be spending some time with his children as his wife goes back to work. And so we're offering up prayers and thankful for all of the lives that she touched while she was an educator here in the school. We go way back. She was a when she was at TSU working in the early learning. Was she one of your teachers?
Say her name again.
Renita Perkins.
No.
She wasn't here. Okay, she must have been in between. Maybe she was there when Sonia was there. So, or maybe Crystal, one of them. But she used to be out there, and so we're sending it. But she wasn't Perkins there. Yes, she was. She was Perkins.
No.
Okay, all right. So, because she was doing a field place. But anyway, so we're sending celebration for that. If you have prayers that you want us to and want me to be in prayer for, please hit me up. You can send me a text message, hit me up on Facebook, email me, call me, because as I said, in this place, prayer is important for us. And so we want to make sure that we are praying for you. Our reading for this week comes from Luke's Gospel, the 10th chapter, verses 25 and 37. And I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. And while you may not know these verses by the fact that I said Luke 10, you will certainly remember this story, for it is probably the parable that Jesus tells, and it's probably the most famous of his parables. A legal expert stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to gain eternal life?" Jesus replied, "What is it written in the law, and how do you interpret it?" He responded, "You must love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your being and with all of your strength and with all of your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But the legal expert wanted to prove that he was right. So he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" And Jesus replied, "A man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. He encountered thieves who stripped him naked, beat him up, and left him near dead. Now it just so happened that a priest was also going down the same road. And when he saw the injured man, he crossed over to the other side of the road and went on his way. Likewise, a Levite came by that spot, saw the injured man, and crossed over to the other side of the road and went on his way. A Samaritan who was on a journey came to where the man was, but when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. The Samaritan went to him and bandaged his wounds, tending them with oil and wine. And then he placed the wounded man on his own donkey, took him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took 2 full days' worth of wages and gave them to the innkeeper. He said, 'Take care of him, and when I return, I will pay you back for any additional costs.' What do you think? Which one of these 3 was a neighbor to the man who encountered thieves?" Then the legal expert said, "The one who demonstrated mercy toward him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." And this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, Trey, I have to say that of all of the passages that I have preached from, this is probably, well, no, it's not probably, it is the one that I have wrestled with for the longest. Before I even thought anything about going into preaching and having to spend time in studying and reflecting on the scripture, I was asked at my home church to one Sunday be the laity speaker. I guess I must have been around 22, 23, and I was looking for a passage, and this was the passage that I looked at as one of trying to see what it was saying to me as I tried to find a word to be able to share with the people. And I would venture to say, because I've always maintained that Luke is the book that I used to enjoy, and the stories and the illustrations, and it was the focal point. I've become more accustomed to Mark, but Luke was the one, and this story, and I probably visited at least 2 times, even during the years of when it is not in the lectionary readings, of just looking at it and seeing what it is saying to me at a particular time in my life, and as how it has helped me to move from where I was and in addressing some issues in my own life. It has probably been the foundational text for me when I look at my commitment and the covenant that we have established here at Hobson, and my own sense of commitment of who and how I believe my leadership and for ministry here. And so this is it's a familiar story, and I'm never surprised that each time when I open it up and I begin to look at it, in particular on those years of where it is a part where I have to be intentional about looking at it for the sermon preparation for the coming week, that there is not something that's something new that is revealed to me, and I see it and see it in a different light, and it speaks to me in a different way. And I venture to say that I doubt that there's anybody who is listening to this who has not heard this parable that Jesus tells. It's the parable that we call the Good Samaritan. And whether it is, you've probably heard other preachers preach it, and you have certainly been inspired, because if you look around, I mean, whenever, I think every city has some kind of ministry that is called the Good Samaritan. In many places, there are hospitals that are called Good Samaritan hospitals, because people want to be and view themselves as the Good Samaritan. And for me, that as I looked at it, and as I was examining the passage from, even as I say from that first time, I saw myself in many ways like the lawyer who goes to Jesus and asks Jesus. Now, there are some who would say, well, he was trying to trap Jesus and looking at the intention. But when I looked at it out of my own experience, I see one who really wanted to know. He understood the law, and when in this context as a lawyer, he is not a lawyer as we're thinking in the legal context of of going out and you were called to get you out of jail or whatever, or to file some papers for you, whatever we use lawyers for today. But he was the legal expert in understanding what the laws of the church were, what God's laws were, and interpreting those laws. And so he was one that they would turn to as more of a direction and what he needed to do. And in his case, and I think it's an honest question that when he goes, he wants to know, I've been looking at these laws and I hear them. And almost I think I hear within when the tone when I am saying it, it's almost say, look, there are a whole lot of laws in here, and there's no way in the world that I can live up and do all of these things. 640 something laws that I got to follow. I can't do that. Just tell me. Just let's cut through. And tell me what must I do so that I might have eternal life. And there have been times, and I'm not saying it in his case, but I certainly am saying it in my own case, is that I ask that question not because I want to know, ultimately everything I need to do, but I want to know, at least tell me what is the bottom line. I mean, what is the minimum requirement for me to be able to get in? I don't care whether I am in the front or not, in the back, as long as I'm in. So just give me some kind of hint. Because everybody's talking about you and everybody's saying you've got the answers. So just tell me, what must I do? And Jesus, says, wait a minute. In essence, you're it. I mean, you're the law. I mean, you're the one that people are coming to and asking you these questions. So I'm asking you the question, what do you say? And he then, says to Jesus the thing of which, we all understand, we're supposed to love, our God with all that we are, with our hearts, our mind, our body, our spirits, with our strength, everything. We're supposed to love God with all of ourselves, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And Jesus tells him, good answer. That's it. Now all you got to do is, just go do it. But he asked then, as I think so many of us asked today, in particular in how I would have asked it good gracious, 48 years ago, I guess, that I asked then and that I occasionally ask today, help me understand who is my neighbor. And I really think that is a question that resonates with us today when we are people who are so polarized and we are at such extremes with one another, that surely you got to help me understand who it is that I am to view as my neighbor. And then, of course, then Jesus goes on to tell this story. And I think that the story would have particularly resonated with him in particular. We may lose it today because of some of the illustrations that we have, and not understanding the culture, not understanding the background. But as I say, most of you have heard this story and you've heard people to explain it. But I do want to encourage you to think about how radical, because he tells of a man of whom is beaten, who's taken of his clothes. He's left, he's left naked on the side of the road, near death, and he is there, and three people three people encounter him. The first two people of whom encounter him and see him. One is a priest and one is a Levite. Both of them would have been leaders in the congregation, and probably would have been in the story as the man is listening to Jesus tell the story. He probably would have envisioned who those men might have been, that they might have been somebody that he knew. And he may have even been one of whom at some point in time he himself had gone down that Jericho road, that road that goes from Jerusalem to Jericho. And as I say, you know, and you've heard the stories about how rough that road was, and how dangerous it was, and how difficult it was, even without the danger that existed of which this man ended up happening to him. That even without that, it would have been a hard road to get up and down, because it would have been narrow at times, where it would have been only passable in single file of going in. It would have been a journey that takes you from up in Jerusalem, where it would have been nice, and going down to Jericho, where it would have been a dry and almost barren land, of going from a place of where they would have worshiped and they would have encountered God, of going down to a land of where you would not have expected. So, you've got these people who are traveling on this road, and they would have traveled for a purpose. Now, we don't know whether the three who are coming, whether they're going down the road, or whether they are, coming up the road, or, whether they're on the same side or whatever. But we know that what first two is that they don't stop. And we oftentimes make them out to be bad guys. But I know in our own life, in my own experiences, there have been times of where I probably would have given some justification of where they were coming. Let's just say that they were on their way to the temple, and these were religious leaders. These were people of whom, by the time when they got to the temple, would have needed to be clean, and in order to be able to go into the temple and to go over into worship, and so to have touched a man and to handle a man of whom had blood on his body would have then made them unclean, and would have in essence meant that they could not have gone into the temple, and would have made their journey a useless one for them to be able to stop. And I remember on that on that first sermon, I said, don't look too hard on them, because I'm sure that they were probably on their way to Jerusalem to talk about the very things that caused this man to be a victim of a crime. And I can see some people today who says, I can't stop because I've got to go. I mean, I've got to go to Washington. I've got to be able to deal. We've got to get these guns off the streets. We have got to have some kinds of help for people who are struggling with mental illness. I mean, we've got to do something about the cause. I just can't stop, and we can't. It's just too many of them for me to stop. And so I go on my way. And so, we often dress it up so that they are not look so bad. And then Jesus then goes and says, but there was another man. And he says it was a Samaritan. And for us to put that in some context, I mean, it was the ultimate other for this man, this lawyer who was asking this question, who would have seen him as the complete other. He would have been for a liberal a Democrat. He would have been a conservative Republican. He would have been a person of a different race. He was a person of a different economic circumstance. He would have been a person of whom he detested. Maybe he was a person of whom was a right to life person, and a person of whom is stopping is a person who is for pro abortion. I mean, it would have been the ultimate person And this is the one who stops and who ministers to him. And not only does he just stop to see what is going on with him, he puts himself at risk. That he bandages him. He uses his resources to take him to a nearby place for him to stay. Puts him up. Uses 2 days' wages to be able to pay, and then makes a commitment of saying, "When I come back, if I owe you anything." This complete stranger. This complete other is the one who offers. And so, after Jesus tells the story, he then says to the lawyer, which one was the neighbor? And the lawyer says to him, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus tells him, then you go and do likewise. As I said, many times that I have looked at this story, I have put myself as the one who is the lawyer, and I'm asking the questions. I'm already asking from the standpoint that I'm assuming I'm doing some things right. I'm close to getting there. I have probably have attended to people of whom I already consider my neighbors. And so it's not much, but then he gives this challenge and then to have this examination of really who it is that we are reaching out. And so, as I say, but I think anytime that Jesus tells a parable, and we hear a story, then we have to put ourselves in that place and putting ourselves in various roads with that. Because there have been times that, as I've listened to the parable, I've been both. I've been the priest. I've been the Levite, and as I say, I've been the lawyer. But as I am kind of looking at what's going on in the world today, and just kind of seeing, where my life is, this year, and probably where I am leaning toward going with this Sunday, is that I'm the man in the ditch, and I'm the one that needs a neighbor. I'm the one who needs someone to stop. When I was reading last night and looking at it and going back over, I was remembering an episode of Archie Bunker, and it was a episode in there where he needed some blood, and he ended up getting some blood from a black person. At first, he had some concerns, but. It was, the blood and getting the transfusion helped him, and ultimately, Archie said, "Well, I do feel like I can dance a little better." But I mean, we have those choices, and we know of people. And I was just looking at an episode that was just on of MASH, of where there was a person that was in the hospital that needed a transfusion, and he did not want to get the blood of a person, of a black man who was there. And that was the only blood that was available to him. And he was saying, I would almost, I'd rather die, and of course, they didn't let him, and they gave it to him. But that's the world that we live in, and I have and see myself as being the person of whom at this time are looking for those things that are that what is it that about my life, and what is it that am I living in such a way that I stand in the need? And when I realize that I am the one who stands in need, then I also realize that the one who has been the Good Samaritan in my life has been Jesus. And when I look at it from that standpoint, and then when you look at it, that Jesus is in essence saying in the story and invites us to look, you are the one who were in the ditch. And I was the one who came, and I was the one who made the sacrifices. I was the one. You really were not worthy, and really were not the one of whom should have even expected me to stop. But I stopped for you, and we know that He is the one who paid the ultimate price, so that we might be saved from the conditions and saved from the things that we are. And when you realize that in the story, and when that Jesus is the Good Samaritan, and that the man, the lawyer, is really the one, more like the man who is in the ditch, then he then encourages him to recognize who the Good Samaritan is, and then to go and to live his life like the Good Samaritan. And I think it is an invitation for each of us that as we look for this story, is for us to say that Jesus has come, and Jesus has stopped, and Jesus has shown us tremendous mercy, and that we should go into our respective communities, and we should live a life of where we are doing likewise and showing the grace and the mercy to all of those that we encounter who stand in need. So it's a familiar story, but it is one that for me, particularly in this day and time when I am seeing so much that is going on in the world, that I need to be reminded that Jesus went out of his way so that I might have life and have life eternal, and that I am, in following him, am to do likewise. Amen. Well, how things going?
Things are going pretty good, man.
How are you in this heat getting along?
Oh man, it's brutal.
I tell you,
it's brutal. I don't like the heat. I've never liked the heat, and when I go outside in the morning, it's already like, if it feels like this, it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
What's it gonna feel like at 3 o'clock? So
I tell you, today
we're trying to be cool.
Yeah, today, the garbage trucks were late coming, and so I said to Mason, I said, well, let's go outside and wait for the garbage truck, and we can see the garbage truck. And so Mason was like, okay. So we went outside. Mason got outside, and he was looking. He looked up the street, and he didn't see the truck, and then he was like, Granddaddy, hot. And so I said, it'll be all right. And shit, he went to the door. He said, inside. Inside. I don't know. So we went inside, got some water, and then finally when the truck, we went out. We just stood. We stood there long enough to watch him dump one trash can. So he was ready to come back in.
Done
so
after that.
Yeah, so he's like you in that regard. He's not a big heat person. Not a big heat person.
Mm-hmm.
I got two things that I want to ask you about, and the first is kind of related to the sermon that I'm working on and the direction that I'm going with it, and I don't want any names. You don't have to give any names, for this, but who would be a person or a time in your life that if that you helped somebody that people that knew you would say you helped them? I mean, and if you can, we, not,
Right.
saying, too much about the person, but kind of a little bit about the circumstance and situation. That was an unlikely, you just had to respond in that moment.
Well, there have been a few times,
Yeah.
but I don't know that it was uncharacteristic. Like that was, oh, Trey did that. No, I'm usually.
Well, I guess more or less not that you did it, but that for who you did it for. I mean,
Sure.
So if somebody said, man, Trey got up at 2:00 in the morning and went and helped Steve. Steve's car broke down, or Steve got it. And everybody would say, oh yeah, man, shoot, I expect that. But, just kind of a circumstances where somebody or you saw somebody that was in trouble and you said, I have to respond.
Sure. One time that sticks out, I had just got my truck. So that was, like 2010 or 2009, whenever it was. And I had just got in, at that time I used to keep my truck clean, super clean.
Yeah.
And I was taking this lady, we had just came back from a date, and I was taking her back to her house, and there was this car that was broke down. And they were right in front of the gas station, on Trinity Lane. It's like a Pilot or something.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay, all right,
yeah. And so they may have been, I guess, let's say a half a block from the Pilot. And so it was just something in me just pulled up behind them. And I mean, it was a young black guy and a young black woman. And when I pulled up, I asked him, do you need some help? And so he said, we ran out of gas. And so just so happened, I wanted to see what my truck could do. I was trying to test the limits of it. And so I was like, well, I mean, I don't have any cables or whatever, but I'll give you a push.
Right.
And so just so happened, I got up on their bump, and I was like, you might have a little dent or something. You might have a few little scratches, but I'll push it. He was like, it don't matter.
Yeah.
So pushed him into the Pilot gas station, and it was just something in me. I don't know if it was I mean, it was very uncharacteristic. Especially late at night.
Late at night and your truck. I mean, the fact that it might have put us. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it did. It did actually rub some paint off of my truck.
Yeah.
But it, I knew the likelihood of it doing that would be pretty high at that point. So. But I still went ahead and helped them out.
Okay.
And then there was another time, well, I probably told this story on this show before.
Yeah.
It's just, being around some people, and when it's just the fellas, like, it's okay to joke. It's okay to crack jokes and push people to their limits in terms of the joke. And it's okay to be the butt of the joke when it's just the fellas. Mm-hmm. But when you around people who are not within that circle and you still making the same jokes, and you don't like to be joked on, it's like, I have stopped people in their tracks with that whole sentiment. It's like, wait a minute now, I can throw jokes with the best of them, and just because you feel like you impressing somebody that's not a part of the clique, you can't just single this one particular friend out just so you can look good. I said, because if you want to turn those tables, if you really want to go down that road, it's like we can open that box. So you just need to, kind of calm it down.
Sometimes in putting folk down, it's like putting them in the ditch. It's like knocking them out, putting them in the ditch. Yeah.
And making yourself look good, or making yourself seem like you are above someone else. And I really take offense to that, especially with somebody who doesn't have those kind of ill comments to anyone else, and they wouldn't do that to someone else. It just, You know, sometimes you got to stick up for them and go to bat and just voice your opinion and voice my opinion. So I used to do stuff like that all the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to just kind of touch on and is as a part of a text message that I was on today with you and you and Stephen, and I think what really and Stephen was trying to get a suggestion for what to get his nephew, who is turning 18 next week, and of course, some ideas, and you had a real good idea. But I also suggest, that Stephen, take him out and have a conversation. And I think the reason that kind of stood out is because I've been listening to all of these young people, and particularly these of whom are doing some atrocious acts of violence, and then those who are making some choices. And there are people, and it seems like there were warning signs, but nobody was saying something, to them. And so I was just, saying, what do you think? And this is particular, I think, for people who are in your age group, who are having young friends who, and maybe the kids, like in the case of Stephen, it's someone that you've seen, and you've been around, and now he's getting ready to, in essence, kind of go out in the world. What kind of advice would you give him? I mean, there's so many when I'm looking at this story also, the guy got beat up, and there's so many people who end up in bad situations and something happens to them, and we just simply say to them, well, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I went to a funeral, I went to a visitation last week for, a young man who was just walking down the street, and it just appears that out of nowhere that somebody came up. And so we can't always say that people who get in trouble because they were doing the wrong thing. But I do think that there are some young people who may do the wrong thing because they haven't gotten some good advice. And so what would be the advice that you would give to, let's say, Stephen's nephew?
Yeah, man. To keep focus.
Yeah.
And not to set goals that are like, oh, this is what I want to be in 5 years. This is what I want to do, and have my life planned out. And you're 18 years old. It's what I've learned is to try to be better each day. Right? What I did yesterday, and the mistakes that I did yesterday, and the things I didn't do yesterday. As long as I try to be better tomorrow, that is the only thing that you can worry about. Because 5 years from now is not promised. Hell, tomorrow isn't promised. You can't really focus on things that are outside of your control. Also, just kind of piggybacking what I was talking to Steve on the group chat about is to work on your financial stability and your credit. You know what I mean? That is something that I would say, and I'll say it here, that was something that you and Mom did not spearhead or lead me on at all. And I had a rude awakening when I wanted to make a big purchase, and I had some money, but I didn't have any credit. And it's not really learning that it's not much how much money you have, it's how much money you can borrow, right? And so to be mindful of what that looks like and to take ownership of your future in that way. and put yourself in positions to make sound investments and sound purchases, because I've wasted a lot of money on some stupid stuff. And if I could take some of that back, and use my money in different ways, that I could be more happy or happier with some of those decisions. But yeah, man, there was a point with me that it was just I didn't have the focus that I needed to have in certain things. I was just, I wasn't focused on the right thing. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take that Samaritan who was going down had that he had gotten the advice that you just gave, and that he just made a decision. Hey, I can be a better person today, and I can stop and I can help somebody. Good advice. So I hope that there are some folk out there that need to hear it. I hope you hear it. Amen.
Amen.
Well, I want to thank you again for spending some time with us this week, and then just want to kind of just encourage you to on those prayers we lifted up, in particular for those in Highland Park, Illinois, and for places. Philadelphia. There's so many places of where violence and is just it's just affected so many people that we got plenty to pray for. Also, just didn't put it on the prayer list then, but including it now. We talked about it with Trey. It's hot out there, and it's going to be hot again this week. And so I just want to encourage you to make sure that you check in on some people of whom and take care of yourself. Stay hydrated, and most importantly, those of you who have got little ones, be extremely cautious of them in cars and being in vehicles. I think already. The numbers of children this past week, I think it was like 16 children who were left in cars. And so thank you for tuning in and just praying for you, and ask that you continue to pray for us and take care, be well, and may you be the Good Samaritan.